As night falls over the small town of Maplewood, a thick blanket of fog rolls in, muffling the sounds of the outside world. The moon hangs low, casting an eerie glow that filters through the dense mist, illuminating the Victorian houses that line Elm Street, each with its own story of secrets and shadows. In the heart of this quiet street sits the weathered home of Agnes Delaney, an elderly woman whose presence has become as ghostly as the fog that envelops her house. The once vibrant paint peels away, revealing the bare wood beneath, and the garden, once filled with colorful flowers, is now overrun with tangled weeds and dead branches. An air of neglect clings to the property, much like the townsfolk's whispers about Agnes herself. Inside, the atmosphere is thick with memories. The living room, illuminated only by the flickering flames of a small fireplace, is cluttered with the remnants of Agnes's life. Dusty photographs, jars filled with dried herbs, and an old rocking chair that creaks with every slight movement. Shadows dance across the walls, twisting and morphing into shapes that seem to reach out toward her, evoking an unsettling sense of isolation. Agnes, frail and stooped, sits in her rocking chair, wrapped in a tattered quilt, her gnarled hands clasped tightly in her lap. Her gray hair, once a deep chestnut, is now a wispy halo around her head, and her eyes, clouded with age, reflect a lifetime of sorrow and longing. As she rocks gently back and forth, a faint tremor in her hands mirrors the tension in the air, her mind drifting between the present and a past that haunts her. Suddenly, a loud knock resonates through the silence, sharp and jarring, causing Agnes to startle. The sound echoes in her mind, unsettling the fragile peace she has fought to maintain. She hesitates, the grip on her rocking chair tightening as the knocking persists. Who could it be, she wonders, dread curling in her stomach like a tightening noose. Peering through the grimy window, she squints against the darkness, straining to see beyond the mist. But there is only the swirling fog, a thick wall of gray that obscures any view of the outside world. With a shuddering breath, she opens the door, revealing the night. A cold gust of wind sweeps past her as if carrying away her courage, and she finds herself alone. No visitor, only the sound of her heartbeat thrumming loudly in her ears. As she closes the door, the shadows around her seem to deepen, encroaching on her space, as if to fill the void left by the absence of human connection. A familiar yet distant voice echoes in her mind. Thomas, her husband who vanished all those years ago, leaving her to grapple with the weight of his absence. In her solitude, she murmurs his name, a fragile prayer to the silence. The memories rush in like a tide, engulfing her. Moments of laughter, love, and then the haunting mystery of his disappearance. A chill runs through her, and the temperature in the room seems to drop suddenly, wrapping her in an icy embrace. A shiver travels down her spine as she feels the shadows stirring, as if something dark and unseen is reaching out to her. The whispers of the past intertwine with the present, creating a tapestry of dread that clings to her. Suddenly, out of the corner of her eye, she catches a glimpse of movement in her garden, a fleeting shadow flitting between the trees. Panic rises within her, and she grips the arm of her chair as the shadows seem to pulse around her. Is it just my imagination, she wonders, her heart racing? But deep down, she knows that the whispers have begun, and they are not just echoes of her past. As Agnes settles back into her chair, the weight of loneliness presses down on her like a heavy fog. The shadows shift, and the air grows thicker, heavy with unspoken fears. Outside, the wind howls, and the darkness deepens, as if warning her that she is not as alone as she thinks. The feeling of being watched envelops her, a creeping sense of dread that will not relent, setting the stage for the horrors yet to unfold. As dawn breaks over Maplewood, the sunlight struggles to pierce through the thick fog, casting a muted glow on the streets. The town stirs awake, but the sense of unease lingers like the morning mist, clinging to the air. Agnes Delaney remains a ghostly figure, hidden behind the curtains of her crumbling Victorian home, as the world outside begins to gossip. In the neighboring houses, whispers float through the air like leaves in the autumn breeze. The townsfolk speak of Agnes in hushed tones, a mix of fear and curiosity coloring their conversations. Mrs. Johnson, the ever-watchful neighbor, leans over her fence, gossiping with her friends about the reclusive woman who lives alone, her eyes wide with the thrill of rumors. They say she dabbles in dark arts, she whispers, a shiver of excitement coursing through her. Her husband disappeared, and she hasn't been the same since. I wouldn't go near that house if I were you. Children, emboldened by tales of the supernatural, dare each other to approach Agnes's yard. They giggle and shiver, recalling the stories of the Watcher, a shadowy figure said to guard her home and keep intruders at bay. They pretend to knock on her door, then run away, shrieking with laughter. But the laughter quickly fades as the cold weight of dread settles over them, the legends echoing in their minds. Amid the gossip, Jason Collins, a bright-eyed college student with an adventurous spirit, arrives in Maplewood. He's heard the tales and is drawn to Agnes's mysterious reputation. Unlike the others, he doesn't feel fear, he feels curiosity. With his passion for herbalism, he believes there's knowledge to be gained from Agnes, wisdom buried beneath the layers of rumors. Little does he know, he's stepping into a web of darkness. One crisp afternoon, Jason gathers his courage and makes his way to Agnes's home, the damp leaves crunching underfoot. He approaches the gate, the rusted hinges creaking as he pushes it open. The air is thick with the scent of decaying leaves and something herbal, a mixture that tingles at the back of his throat. As he steps into the garden, he can't shake the feeling that he's being watched. Agnes stands at her doorstep, framed by the dark wood of her entrance, her face a mask of curiosity and suspicion. The wrinkles on her face deepen as she sizes up the young man before her. "What do you want?" she asks, her voice low and gravelly, each word dripping with the weight of years spent in solitude. Jason introduces himself, explaining his interest in herbs and his desire to learn from her. To his surprise, a flicker of warmth ignites in Agnes's eyes, but it is quickly overshadowed by a shadow of fear. She reluctantly invites him inside, the atmosphere shifting as he crosses the threshold into her world. Inside, the dim light creates a kaleidoscope of shadows that dance along the walls, forming unsettling shapes that twist and writhe. Jason's eyes scan the cluttered room, landing on jars filled with herbs, some familiar, others alien and unsettling. The air is thick with a mix of scents, some sweet, others acrid, creating a sensory overload that makes him dizzy. As they talk, Agnes's demeanor fluctuates between warmth and sudden coldness, and Jason begins to notice her fixation on the garden outside. "They don't understand me," she murmurs, her gaze drifting toward the window where the sun struggles to penetrate the fog. "They think I'm a witch, a monster, but they don't know the truth." Intrigued, Jason probes further, asking about the symbols etched on her garden fence, strange marks that seem to pulse with a life of their own. At this, Agnes stiffens, her expression darkening. "Those are for protection," she replies, her voice suddenly sharp, laced with an edge of desperation. "There are things out there that should not be disturbed. You must understand." Her words hang heavy in the air, the underlying threat palpable. Jason's excitement wanes as unease creeps in, settling like a lead weight in his stomach. He senses that beneath Agnes's fragile exterior lies a depth of darkness, a past intertwined with loss and perhaps something far more sinister. As the sun dips lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the room, Jason decides to leave, his curiosity tinged with caution. The air grows colder as he steps outside, the fog rolling back in, enveloping him in its embrace. He glances back at the house, its windows dark and foreboding as if watching him leave. In the fading light, the townsfolk continue to whisper. As Jason walks away, he overhears snippets of conversation about Agnes, tales of her husband's disappearance, and the names of others who have vanished from Maplewood. The threads of the past weave tightly around him, forming a tapestry of horror that he is only beginning to unravel. As he reaches his home, the shadows seem to follow him, a sinister reminder that the deeper he digs into Agnes's life, the more he risks awakening the darkness that lies dormant. Unbeknownst to him, the Watcher is always present, lurking in the depths of the fog, waiting for the right moment to claim its next victim. The leaves outside swirl in a restless dance, caught in the grips of an early autumn breeze as Jason Collins returns to his routine, but he cannot shake the image of Agnes Delaney from his mind. Every corner of his thoughts is haunted by her haunting presence, the unsettling way she spoke of her past, and the ominous symbols that linger in his memory like dark clouds gathering before a storm. Days pass, each one steeped in an air of mystery, as Jason makes frequent visits to Agnes's home, drawn deeper into her world. With each meeting, he learns a bit more about the herbs she cultivates, the remedies she concocts, and the legends that seem to pulse around her like an unseen force. She shares snippets of her life, the laughter and love she had with Thomas, but the stories always skirt the edges of darkness, never venturing too close to the truth. One chilly evening, Jason helps Agnes tend to her garden, the earthy smell of damp soil filling the air as they pull weeds and trim overgrown plants. The setting sun casts long shadows across the yard, the light retreating and leaving behind a creeping sense of foreboding. As they work side by side, the atmosphere shifts. Agnes's demeanor grows increasingly erratic, her laughter punctuated by moments of silence as she stares into the distance, lost in memories that seem to haunt her. While digging near the edge of the garden, Jason's shovel strikes something hard, a sound like a dull thud that sends a jolt through him. Curiosity piqued, he pushes aside the dirt and pulls out a weathered trunk, the wood splintered and worn by time. Agnes's expression darkens and a flicker of fear dances in her eyes. "Leave it be, Jason," she warns, her voice trembling. "Some things are best left buried." Ignoring her pleas, Jason pries the trunk open, revealing a collection of faded photographs, each one a haunting reminder of lives lost. Faces stare back at him, their smiles frozen in time, but their eyes seem to follow him with a knowing sadness. Among them, he spots the familiar visage of a recent neighbor, a young woman who had vanished just weeks earlier. A chill runs down his spine as the weight of realization sinks in. These aren't just photographs. They are records of disappearances tied to Agnes's life. "Agnes, what is this?" he asks, his voice barely above a whisper, the dread creeping into his chest. The air around them thickens, the shadows of the garden twisting and writhing like specters. Agnes takes a step back, her face contorting with a mixture of anger and fear. "You don't understand. They were all special. And now they are part of me," she hisses, her eyes wild with a feverish glow. In that moment, the truth begins to unfurl like a dark flower blooming in the night. Jason senses that Agnes has been preserving these souls, binding them to her through the very herbs she so lovingly tends. Each photograph represents a piece of her past, a connection to those she has lost, and those she may have had a hand in losing. The air crackles with an electric tension, the weight of her words hanging between them. Agnes steps closer, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "They don't understand my power. They think I'm a monster, but I'm merely a caretaker. I have to keep them safe." Her words hang in the air, laced with desperation and something more sinister. Jason's pulse quickens, a primal instinct urging him to flee, but he finds himself rooted in place, captivated and horrified. Suddenly, the temperature drops and an unseen force envelops them, the shadows closing in as if they have come alive. Jason feels a tingling sensation crawling up his spine, a primal fear igniting his instincts. Something is watching. He glances around, heart racing, as the shadows seem to pulse and writhe with anticipation. "Please, Jason," Agnes pleads, desperation dripping from her voice. "You must help me protect them. The Watcher won't let me be alone." Her eyes, wide and pleading, reflect a depth of sorrow that speaks volumes, but the reality of what she is asking pierces through his gut like a blade. With newfound clarity, Jason realizes the true horror of Agnes's existence. The Watcher, the dark entity that protects her secrets, looms just beyond the edges of their conversation, waiting for any sign of defiance. The air grows heavier, charged with an impending doom that feels almost tangible. Fighting the urge to run, Jason confronts her. "This isn't right, Agnes. You're not keeping them safe. You're imprisoning them." His voice is steady, but beneath it lies a quiver of fear as the shadows thicken around them. Agnes's expression twists into one of rage and despair, the fragile mask of warmth shattered. "You don't know what they'll do. They'll take me too. I can't let that happen." In her desperation, her voice rises, echoing into the twilight, but just as quickly her resolve crumbles into a soft sob, and the shadows seem to pull back, listening. Jason's heart aches for her, torn between the urge to flee and the compassion that has grown through their time together. As the moment stretches on, he glances at the photographs once more, the faces staring back at him, pleading for release. But before he can voice his thoughts, a sudden wind sweeps through the garden, extinguishing the last remnants of light. The temperature plummets and he feels a chilling presence pressing in, suffocating and relentless. The shadows whisper around him, a cacophony of voices echoing the pain of the trapped souls, and Jason realizes he is now entangled in something far more sinister than he had ever imagined. Just as he begins to grasp the magnitude of the situation, the shadows writhe around him, and he feels the unmistakable presence of the Watcher closing in, ready to claim its next victim. In that moment, Jason understands the true depth of Agnes's darkness, and he is left questioning not only her fate, but his own as well. The atmosphere in Agnes's garden grows suffocating as darkness envelops them, a swirling tempest of shadow and despair. Jason's breath quickens as the chill seeps into his bones, every instinct screaming at him to run. Yet he remains rooted in place, torn between the urgent need to escape and the compelling pull of Agnes's turmoil. Suddenly, the garden seems to pulsate, the very ground beneath him trembling as if reacting to an unseen force. The whispers grow louder, a symphony of anguished voices rising and falling like a dark tide. Jason feels their presence, the souls trapped within Agnes's world crying out for liberation. He glances at her, uncertainty etched on his face as her expression shifts from fear to a mix of defiance and desperation. "You have to understand," Agnes cries, her voice breaking through the chaos, piercing the veil of shadows. "The Watcher protects me, protects them. Without it, they will come for me." Her eyes dart around, wide and wild, as if she can see the encroaching darkness lurking just beyond the edges of her garden. The urgency in her tone hints at the gravity of the situation. This is not just about her, it's about a battle for her very soul. Before Jason can respond, the ground shakes violently, and an oppressive silence falls, as if the world is holding its breath. Suddenly, a figure emerges from the swirling shadows, tall, dark, and amorphous. It seems to absorb the very light around it. A sense of foreboding washes over Jason as the Watcher materializes, its form shifting and swirling like smoke caught in a whirlwind, eyes glowing with an unnatural light. "Agnes!" It hisses, its voice a chilling blend of whispers and echoes, reverberating through the air like a distant storm. The temperature drops further, a bone-deep cold that seeps into Jason's very core. He can feel the weight of its gaze upon him, a predatory hunger mixed with an ancient sorrow that sends a jolt of terror through his veins. "Stay back!" Jason shouts, instinctively stepping in front of Agnes, a futile gesture that surprises even him. His heart races as he faces the entity that has loomed over her life for so long, sensing the power it holds and the danger it represents. "What do you want from us?" The Watcher looms closer, its form flickering like a candle in a gust of wind. "You cannot save her," it whispers, the sound slithering into his mind, creating a sense of dread that wraps around him like a vice. "She is bound to me, as are all the others. Their souls are entwined in her fate." Jason feels a surge of empathy for Agnes, realizing the true cost of her connection to the Watcher. "But you don't have to do this. There's still time to break free," he pleads, desperation creeping into his voice as he tries to reach her through the veil of darkness that surrounds them both. "Freedom comes at a price," the Watcher hisses, its form swirling more intensely, causing the air to crackle with energy. Agnes must choose, continue her path of preservation, or become part of the cycle. Sacrifice yourself for them. Jason's heart sinks as he realizes the gravity of the Watcher's words. Agnes's life is inextricably linked to those trapped souls, and the only way to liberate them is through her own destruction. The thought sends a shiver through him, igniting a fierce protectiveness over the fragile woman who has become both a mentor and a friend. "No!" Agnes cries, her voice breaking as she fights against the emotional tide. "I won't let that happen." She steps forward, shaking her head as if trying to dispel the shadows that cling to her. "I will protect them at all costs." The Watcher's laughter echoes, a chilling sound that resonates with malice. Then the choice is made. You cannot escape the fate woven for you. It stretches its arms wide, dark tendrils reaching out as if to grasp Agnes and pull her back into the void. "Agnes, fight it," Jason urges, stepping closer to her, desperately trying to connect with the woman he has come to admire. "You're stronger than this. You can break the cycle." In that moment, a flicker of recognition passes through Agnes's eyes, a glimmer of the fierce spirit that had drawn him to her in the first place. I can't let you take me," she shouts, her voice trembling but resolute. I refuse to be your pawn any longer. As the Watcher recoils, the shadows around them swirl violently, creating a maelstrom of darkness that feels alive, thrumming with energy. The air crackles as Agnes channels her inner strength, drawing upon the very herbs and roots she has nurtured for decades. With a sudden surge of defiance, she raises her hands, summoning the energy from the plants that surround her. The ground trembles beneath their feet, and a blinding light erupts from the earth, illuminating the garden as if the sun has broken through the oppressive fog. The dark tendrils of the Watcher writhe and twist, momentarily stunned by the radiant force that Agnes unleashes. "You will not take me!" Agnes shouts, her voice echoing with newfound power as the light engulfs her. The garden blooms in vibrant color, a stark contrast to the darkness surrounding them, and for a brief moment, Jason feels hope flicker to life. But the Watcher is not easily thwarted. It lets out a roar of fury that shakes the very foundations of the earth, and the shadows push back against the light, creating a chaotic battle between darkness and illumination. The air vibrates with tension as the two forces collide, each vying for dominance, and Jason finds himself caught in the crossfire, aware that he is witnessing a confrontation far beyond his understanding. Just as the darkness seems to engulf them again, Jason recalls the photographs, the trapped souls begging for freedom. He glances at Agnes, her face a mixture of fear and determination. "Agnes, let them go. Release them. They need your strength," he urges, feeling the weight of the moment press down on him like a stone. Agnes's eyes widen, the realization dawning on her as she comprehends the true cost of her protection. The spirits of the lost, entwined in her fate, long for liberation. With a deep breath, she channels her energy once more, focused not just on herself, but on the souls she has sheltered. "I release you," she cries, the light around her expanding and pulsating. "You are free." As she speaks those words, the photographs around them shimmer, the faces smiling one last time as they dissolve into the radiant light. The shadows howl in rage, thrashing violently, but the force of Agnes's release pushes back against the darkness, unraveling the bond that has kept them captive for so long. Jason watches in awe and terror as the dark tendrils of the Watcher fray and weaken, shrieks of anger filling the air as Agnes's power overwhelms it. For a fleeting moment, he believes they might triumph over the darkness. But the Watcher, now furious, lashes out with a final surge of energy, its essence intertwining with the shadows and forming a chaotic storm around them. As the light begins to fade, Jason realizes they must act quickly. "Agnes, we can't let it take you," he shouts, extending his hand toward her. "Fight back!" In that moment, with the weight of the souls behind her, Agnes steadies herself, her expression transforming from fear to fierce determination. She takes a deep breath and meets Jason's gaze, their bond strengthening as they prepare for the final confrontation. "Together," she whispers, a resolute fire igniting in her eyes. "Us." As the Watcher lunges toward them, darkness surging, they both raise their hands, a powerful wave of light surging forth as they channel the energy of hope, love, and the spirits released. The clash reverberates, a cataclysmic battle of light and shadow. And as the storm rages, Jason understands that the outcome will define not just their fates, but the very essence of the town itself. The garden trembles as the final confrontation escalates, the air thick with tension and dread. Jason and Agnes stand together, their hands raised as they channel the combined force of the released spirits and their own will. The radiant light blazes fiercely, illuminating the darkness that threatens to consume them, but the Watcher, furious and desperate, lashes out with a malevolence that reverberates through the very ground beneath them. "You think you can defeat me?" it hisses, its voice now a low growl, echoing with an ancient power that sends a shiver down Jason's spine. The shadows swirl and twist, forming nightmarish shapes that seem to reach for him, hungry for despair. The oppressive atmosphere grows heavier, as if the very weight of the world is pressing down on them, suffocating any hope of escape. "We can't give in!" Jason shouts, determination surging through him as he locks eyes with Agnes. The connection they forged in the chaos strengthens their resolve, and he can see the flicker of fear in her gaze morph into fierce defiance. "Together, Agnes, we have to believe." Agnes nods, her features etched with determination as she channels her energy, the light pulsating around them like a heartbeat. "You don't own us!" she screams, her voice carrying the weight of every soul she has lost and every spirit she has protected. The Watcher recoils momentarily, a flicker of uncertainty passing through its shadowy form. With a sudden surge, they thrust their hands forward, releasing a torrent of light that washes over the dark entity. The Watcher shrieks, the sound piercing the air like a banshee's wail, but the darkness responds, swirling violently as it fights against their radiant force. The garden erupts in chaos as the two powers clash, creating a vortex of energy that spirals around them. As the light and shadow intertwine, Jason feels the world around him begin to fray, reality itself threatening to unravel. He catches glimpses of the lost souls within the darkness, their faces contorted in agony and longing. It hits him. This battle isn't just about freeing Agnes or defeating the Watcher. It's about the very essence of those who have been trapped for so long. He recalls the photographs and the whispered names, each one a story cut short, and he knows he cannot falter. "You must leave this place," Jason shouts into the chaos, directing his words toward the spirits caught in the crossfire. "You are free. You have the power to break this cycle." For a fleeting moment, the faces within the shadows seem to flicker, their anguish mingling with a glimmer of hope. He watches in disbelief as some of the figures begin to rise, shimmering in the light as if grasping for freedom. "Join us," Agnes cries, her voice resonating through the chaos. "Take your strength back." The Watcher roars in anger, its form shifting violently, tendrils of darkness lashing out to silence them. Jason feels a rush of wind as the shadows lash around him, an icy grip tightening around his throat. Panic surges within him, but he fights to keep his focus. The light surges again, pushing back against the shadows, illuminating the garden in a surreal glow. Suddenly, a shadowy arm reaches out, grabbing Jason's wrist with a vice-like grip. "You will pay for this," the Watcher snarls, its presence closing in around him like a suffocating shroud. Fear floods his senses as he realizes he is now the target, the entity seeking to consume him and drag him into the abyss alongside Agnes. "Jason!" Agnes cries out, horror lacing her voice as she feels the pull of darkness surrounding him. In that moment, the weight of their bond is palpable, the sacrifice they both must make pressing heavily upon them. "Let it go! I can't lose you!" In that instant, Jason's heart races as he grapples with the reality of their situation. He knows he must act quickly. With a surge of adrenaline, he draws upon the energy coursing through him, channeling the hope and strength of the souls they've released. "No!" he shouts defiantly, breaking free of the shadow's grasp. "You will not take me!" Gathering all his strength, he steps closer to Agnes, intertwining their hands in a powerful gesture of unity. The light flares brighter, exploding with the combined force of their wills as they push against the encroaching darkness. "Together, we can end this." With a final resounding cry, they unleash the full force of their combined power, sending a wave of brilliant light cascading through the garden. The shadows recoil in terror, twisting and writhing as the brilliance surges forward, engulfing the Watcher in a blinding glow. "No!" the entity howls, its form fracturing under the radiant force, the sound echoing with rage and anguish. "You cannot escape!" But Jason and Agnes hold firm, their connection anchoring them against the tempest of darkness. The light floods the garden, sweeping away the shadows, and as it spreads, Jason catches glimpses of the trapped souls finally breaking free, their faces reflecting relief and gratitude as they rise toward the heavens. With a final desperate scream, the Watcher disintegrates, a swirling mass of darkness exploding into a shower of shadows that scatter into the night, vanishing like smoke in the wind. The garden is left silent, the oppressive weight of darkness lifted. For a moment, Jason and Agnes stand there, panting heavily, feeling the warm glow of victory surrounding them. But as the realization of what they have just accomplished sinks in, a sense of emptiness fills the space. Jason turns to Agnes, her face pale but resolute. "Is it really over?" he asks, his voice trembling with uncertainty. Agnes nods, her eyes glistening with tears. "We freed them, but the scars will remain. The darkness will always be a part of us." As they survey the now empty garden, the weight of the moment settles in. They both understand that while they have defeated the Watcher, the echoes of those lost souls will linger, reminders of a past they can never truly escape. In the distance, the faint sound of laughter floats through the air, and Jason feels a flicker of hope. Maybe the souls are truly at peace now, free to wander beyond the confines of the darkness that had held them captive. But as he turns to leave the garden, a sudden chill sweeps over him, and he catches a glimpse of a shadow darting among the trees. A flicker of uncertainty grips his heart, and he shares a look with Agnes, a silent understanding that the remnants of darkness may never truly be extinguished. As they step out of the garden, Jason knows that while they have triumphed, the battle against the shadows will continue, an eternal struggle between light and dark. He looks at Agnes, her spirit indomitable, and realizes that together they will face whatever lies ahead, united against the encroaching darkness.